Hey there everyone, welcome to Crappy Reviews, the home of No Rules Reviews. Now what's No Rules Reviews mean exactly? It means whatever the hell I want it to mean, damn it. I don't adhere to any set professional standard, it's all raw and my own personal thoughts and opinions, and if you don't like it, hell, don't watch. It's pretty simple really, but there's always some morons who don't understand what optional content is. Now, after such negative feedback to my original Uncharted 4 review, including threats, harassment, and much more, I decided to go back and revise my review a bit. I've seen the light. Perhaps I was a bit too hard on Uncharted 4. It's clearly a gem of a game, and I must have been completely crazy to score it a 7.5 out of 10. So let's rectify that and go over the review, and review the game again, if you will. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm reviewing Uncharted 4 at Thief's End, exclusively on the God Station 4. Leading up to the release of this game, I played through all of the Uncharted games in the Uncharted collection, and I'll go on a record as saying it's one of, if not my favorite, PlayStation franchise. I think Uncharted 2 is still one of the greatest games last generation, and it still holds up today. Uncharted 4 is literally the reason I bought my PS4 to begin with. It's been a bit of a rocky road for Uncharted 4, however, having seen the writer, director, actors, and animators all leave at various points during production. Could this franchise survive everything thrown at it? Let's find out, folks. Graphically, Uncharted 4 should be in everyone's mind when picking a top 5 list for best graphics in a game. There's a lot of little attention to detail being paid here, and going from place to place, that makes it all the more impressive. For example, Drake can get muddy and then the mud washes off when you hop in the water. When you come out of some water, you're completely soaked, even your hair. It's really amazing how they use in-game models for the cutscenes, and it really immerses you into the game all the more. If I had any complaint with the graphics, it's that the character models look a bit off here, especially Sully's model, who looks like he's had some very bad plastic surgery, almost unrecognizable. The frame rate chugged a bit here and there as well, but nothing too terrible. The thing that really bugged me throughout the game was the motion blur effect, which bothered my eyes throughout my playthrough and gave me a bit of a headache. Something that I actually forgot to mention in my first review was the cloned enemies. This is something that I've often docked other games for as far as the scores, and this game will not be any different. Most of the enemies you fight in this game look exactly like all the other enemies. It's definitely not something a true masterpiece would do in my opinion, and so it's going to lose points for that. The gameplay is pretty basic, exactly like all the other Uncharted games. The new tweaks, well, they all seem very familiar if you played the latest Tomb Raider game. Basically, Drake can now throw a rope with a hook and swing over distances. And he also gets the pick that helps him climb up walls and things like that at about the halfway point. The gunplay is definitely superior in Uncharted 4 than the previous entries. It just goes to show how bad the other entries suffered from a technical standpoint, yet nobody dared mention how bad the mechanics were. There's loads of weapon variety as well. You will find yourself climbing a lot in this game, and there's various puzzles to solve in order to progress the story as well. Now, a couple of gameplay elements really started to bug me from an early point in the game. First was the crate on wheels that conveniently shows up around 20 to 30th times in various areas. It reminded me of all the points in The Last of Us where Joel had to use the board to float Ellie across the water because she couldn't swim. I can't believe they're pulling that trick again. The other thing that bugged me about the game was the amount of climbing. I know Uncharted games have always had that element, but this game really took it to the extreme. Very repetitive and monotonous to say the least. Oh, and something I didn't put in my original review, there's various points during the game where you'll have branching dialogue options to pick, but it absolutely doesn't matter what you pick, it all ends up the same way. So it's really just an illusion of a choice. Again, other games lose points for having options in dialogue and having what you pick not actually matter, and I don't see why Uncharted 4 would be any different. Think Mass Effect, your choices don't matter, and Uncharted 4, your choices don't matter. Now, without spoiling too much, the story is very cliche and somewhat ham-fisted in my opinion. Drake is out of the treasure hunting game. Yeah, he's settled down and married, when suddenly the brother who we've never heard of prior to this game comes asking for help. Funny story, in the previous Uncharted games they even mentioned that Drake was an only child. So it seems very forced that Drake now has this long-lost brother. And worst of all, he isn't a likable character in the least. He's not a character you want to help at all. The other jarring factor in the game is that it starts off almost exactly like the first Uncharted game did. Then it flashes back to Nathan as a kid, then it flashes forward to when he's about 20, then it flashes forward to a more recent area, and eventually you'll catch up to where the game all started. It's very odd how it's laid out, to be honest with you. I get the feeling that Neil Druckmann one day said, hey, let's rip off the Goonies, Assassin's Creed, The Last of Us, and Tomb Raider, and they all combined it to create Uncharted 4. Now, Tall Grass is the real star of Uncharted 4. Now you use your Assassin's Creed type ability to stealth kill your enemies, and speaking of killing, Drake is one cold-blooded murderer. Dude kills hundreds if not thousands of people in this game, just la-di-da. One of the main things that bugs me about the story and overall plot is that they've changed Uncharted from a lighthearted and fun experience to a more dark and obviously Last of Us inspired tone, and I just wasn't a fan of that change. Now, the multiplayer in Uncharted 4 is basic to say the least, and it can be fun, but it doesn't really hold a bearing on the score one way or the other. The fact that the plot twist in the game was predictable certainly didn't help much either, and the fact that the only new things Uncharted 4 brought to the table were things it handled better in Rise of the Tomb Raider. You know, overall the game tries to convince you that it's not linear, but there's really only ever one way to go, and everywhere else is completely closed off. Considering the staff problems and delays that Naughty Dog has suffered, it's more than obvious some things wouldn't be up to snuff, and with Uncharted 2 being the peak, there's nowhere to go but down. I'm sure for the most part people will really enjoy the game, in much the way people enjoy Michael Bay movies, like the Transformer movies or what have you. Action, things blowing up, not plot heavy or hard to follow. Now don't get me wrong, Uncharted 4 is a solid entry which will probably take the average gamer between 10 and 12 hours to complete, but it's definitely not a masterpiece or an artwork. There are some cool fan service and Easter eggs thrown into the game that I enjoyed, but it was hard to get over the terrible plot and repetitive nature of the gameplay. Uncharted 4 gets a downgraded score of 7 out of 10, too many mistakes to be considered a classic or masterpiece, and if you thought threats or harassment would cause me to change my score, you're definitely stupider than you look. Rack 'em up, breaking those pony legs. Thanks for watching. Crapgamer out.